Creator Circle is a weekly call for creators like you to ask your questions about the law of attraction. To get information on how to connect, please go to cocreationcoaching.org/Creators Circle.
Welcome to the Creator Circle, call number 1. And just once again to summarize what this is all about, this is just the time. We're going to try to go between 20, 25, maximum 30 minutes. I'm going to really try not to. In order for people to ask questions about the law of attraction, and if there's free time, maybe we'll just get into general discussion on the law of attraction. But this is just time for highly focused, deep discussion. And it's very similar to the old support calls, just more focused, I guess. So I am open to any questions or even topics for deeper discussion.
I don't know if let's see if it turns into a question. It's just sort of something I was thinking about, and perhaps you can expound upon it if that works. So I didn't quite finish yet the post that you just did today, which what I have read of it is awesome. And was thinking about something that I guess hadn't really gotten through my head until just now. Just sort of this feeling I'd been having previously that, like, if I just sort of relaxed and let everything be okay, it would get rid of the tension. But that is not the case, is it? That's actually... Oh, hello, Justin.
Hi, Justin. I'll be with us for a second. Anyway, go on.
That's actually... It's helpful to sort of just kind of... assume is not really the right word, but that's the only thing I can think of. Just sort of assume that things will work out, and it sort of cuts out the whole, like, is it going to come? Like, focusing on things as they are.
Right. So, first of all, hi, Justin. How are you?
Hi there.
Hey. So, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions. It's the point that I think most people have so much trouble with is this question of, relaxation, just letting things flow, whatever, versus really putting an effort to move things along. And, I mean, I'm going to go back to what I discussed in that podcast, number 19 of Co-Create Your Life, about the two opposing forces. Because when you are in a resistance mode, when you're on that resistance end of the spectrum, I started calling it the spectrum of manifestation in the first Reader's Questions video on Monday. And when you're on that resistance end, then relaxation is exactly what you want to do. Because fighting with it is just going to make it worse. But when you're on the momentum end, and yes, there's tension, and it might be pretty heavy tension, but you still have momentum going, then relaxation can kind of be a way of sabotaging things, or even of delaying things, okay? Because, as I said in today's post, it'll be yesterday by the time this recording goes up, when you have tension, your subconscious mind needs to resolve it, okay? Because it doesn't like tension. It's like I use the analogy of the lightning strike, and when there's that high negative charge across from the high positive charge on the ground, it needs to balance. It needs to resolve itself, right?
Uh-huh.
And so that's how it is with the subconscious mind. It needs to resolve that tension. And the only two ways of resolving that tension is by you letting go of your goal, or by the subconscious pulling your current reality into alignment with where you are. And so when you relax, and that can mean a lot of different things, but what that means for some people sometimes is that you are not focusing on it so heavily, that you are letting it be okay. This is so hard because the language around it is so mixed and confused sometimes. I was going to say, let it be okay that it's not here yet. In some sense, it's a great technique for reducing resistance. But when you're trying to grow momentum, that's not an okay technique, because that's sort of saying, okay, it's not here. I can wait for it. I don't need it here right now. Those are all soothing statements, but they're also momentum killers. You just have to ask yourself what you need in the moment. Is what I need in the moment right now the removal of resistance or the increasing of momentum? Because those are two different goals, and they're both valid goals at different points of the process. So when you're in resistance, and those are great statements to sort of soothe resistance, but when you're trying to move forward, that's not going to work. Things that are going to work are things like, I choose for this to be here. Things like imagining this goal being here right now, and the other techniques that are related to that. So that is what you want to be working on. But when you say things, when you relax into it, when you allow it to be what it is, those are resistance removal techniques, not momentum enhancing techniques. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So relaxing, we have this big thing I think a lot of people like to do about going with the flow. I'd say the law of attraction is not going with the flow. And that's one of the big things I experimented with a lot, because Abraham Hicks has this idea that, you ever hear their metaphor about dropping the oars?
No.
Where basically the metaphor is like you're in a river and all your goals are downstream. Right? So
okay.
if you just stop trying, if you just drop the oars and let the stream take you, you'll get to your goal naturally. And that's just not true. And I've tried it. Okay, I'm just going to drop the oars. I'm just going to not try. I'm just going to feel good. I'm just going to be in La La Land, whatever, and not focus on any resistance and not focus on anything at all. And nothing ever happens. So the law of attraction is not with the flow. What's with the flow is what you've already been getting. That's your current level stuff. But the problem is that when you want the next level, that's not with the flow. It's against the flow. You have to create a new flow.
Yeah, so you got to create your own flow.
Right, you got to create a new flow. And that's not, I'm really into like Taoism in certain senses, but that is, and Taoism is all about, going with the way of things, going with the flow. But you do not want that when you're trying to go for a next level goal or an ultimate level goal. It is against the flow. You're literally creating a whole new way of things, a whole new reality, so to speak. And so relaxing into it is not going to get you there. That's valid when you're trying to get a current level goal or something like that, but it's just not going to work when you are trying to get something bigger than that. Okay. Does that...
The relaxing thing is really good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, guys. The relaxing thing is really good for when you're just trying to remove resistance or pain or something like that. Then you relax into it. But when you want something, you have to go get it. And that's just kind of the way it's always worked for me, too.
Exactly.
Now, what some people mean is, some people on those that say go with the flow, they really mean what they're doing is, I'm doing things when I'm inspired to do them, and then I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. That's sort of going with the flow, but that's going with like your flow and the flow of your manifestation. That's a little different because it's going to go peaks and valleys. It's not, but if you go with the flow, like the actual flow, you will not probably get your manifestation.
Right. What you have to do is you have to create the flow and then go with it.
And then go with it.
Yeah. I gave that metaphor a long time ago about like water going downhill. And I gave the example of the water slide. With the water slide, you have to actually go against the flow to get the water uphill, like to the top of the slide. And then it goes naturally with the flow, just flowing down to the bottom.
It's very ironic because you hate them.
I do hate water slides. But you have to first get it up to the top, which is against the flow. So create the flow, and then the flow will take you to your goal. But you'll know when that happens because it'll get a lot easier to focus on, and things will be inspiring to you. but the initial part of it, the initial step of it, is heavily going against the flow. And the bigger the goal, the more you're going against the flow. And it's hard work. I said at the end of the post, something that's, I think, very controversial. At the end of my deep dive post, I said the LOA is a violent process. It's violent against current reality.
You reminded me of whitewater rafting or something.
Well, yeah, pretty much. It's a violent process. You are acting against the flow of reality, which is absolutely your right to do. But if you just go with the flow of things, you're just going to get what you've always gotten. You will, if you're not focusing on resistance, then you'll get good things within your current realm of possibility, but you won't get more than your realm of possibility. Right, so that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Okay, so what about like when you start to kind of feel like, yeah, what I want is inevitable, like it is going to happen? Is it better to start backing up then, or just keeping up with?
Then, you never want to back off on the momentum unless it's getting too much for you, but then the momentum will feel like it's downhill.
Okay.
It'll feel like, you're, let's say, sledding downhill and you're picking up speed, imagine. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not going to feel like you're just leisurely walking down. It's going to feel like you're picking up speed. Things are moving faster and faster. In the beginning, it'll feel pretty slow because you have to really act against the way of things. But once you have created that new flow, then you can really let go and go with what you're inspired to do and really trust yourself to move towards that goal, and it will take you there very quickly. Of course, always watching out for any sabotaging programs, but generally speaking, yeah, it's just going to take you there, but it's going to feel like you're picking up speed. It's going to feel like it's very exciting. It's not a slow thing at all.
Okay.
Answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we should have time for at least one more question. So other questions or topics?
Well, when you're talking about imagining the reality you want and living from the end, could you say a little bit more about how to make sure you're including will in that so that it's not just idle daydreaming?
Okay, yeah. That's actually a really good question. So when I say living from the end or being at the end of the path, like I said in the post, I mean that emotionally speaking, you are in the place where the goal is already done, right? And yes, you do have to make sure, as I've always said in my posts, that you are actually willing it and not just daydreaming, because there's a huge difference between the two. And so, the difference is the feeling, okay? When you are being at the end of the path, it is going to feel very good, but you're also going to have resistance, okay? So you're going to have thoughts and feelings that contradict what you're trying to hold. And that's a very natural part of the process. I've always said, if you don't get resistance, then something's wrong for a next level goal. If you don't get resistance, you're not doing it right, okay?
Uh-huh.
So if you're imagining being at the end of the path and it just feels good, and then you go about your day and nothing else, you don't feel anything else about it, then you're probably just daydreaming about it, okay? It takes real courage to actually choose a goal. I was working with someone recently, and I do this with a lot of my clients actually, but I'll say, what would it be like to just have this? And they, a lot of times, won't be able to go there. Because it's so, like, what if it doesn't happen? Now, if you're daydreaming, that doesn't affect you. If you're daydreaming, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter if it happens or not, And that's, again, going back to Chaucer's question, that's what we sort of soothe ourselves with sometimes. Well, it doesn't really matter if it happens or not. Just feel good, and that's all that matters. That's what the common teaching is, right? But when you really choose it, when you really require it of reality, it is a completely different feeling. That's where the tension comes in. When you say, I'm going to feel this way because I can, and not only am I going to feel this way, but I'm going to choose that this is going to happen in my reality. This is not just an idle daydream. This is something that I am choosing deliberately, consciously, with my will. Then your subconscious sits up and takes notice, because it says, well, wait a second, we have all this other stuff going on. What about this program here? What about this belief there? And, it'll send up those things against it that aren't a match. So basically, if you're getting resistance, then you're probably choosing it. You're probably choosing the goal. If you're not getting resistance, if it's just feeling good and that's it, then it's just a daydream. So, it's like I said in the post, the higher the tension, the faster things will start to flow once you've overcome those obstacles. Like, the bigger the goal, yes, you have more to overcome, but once it's there, it's there. Right? That's what I've experienced. Have you seen that, Justin?
Yeah, that's when I really am in full force, I just sort of become a juggernaut and get a bunch of stuff done. But you're gonna have resistance. I never even really noticed it like that until Brandon explained it when I started working with him. But you're gonna have to get all of the matches, the non-matches that are out. You're gonna have to get all of that out into the open and then get rid of it.
Right.
So it does. If you're just daydreaming, it just, you don't get anything. But if you're actually going to get what you want, you're gonna have to encounter the resistance of you don't have it yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So it's a scary thing. I've had people really, really frightened of really choosing that goal.
It is hard.
My biggest goals, it took me a long time to actually just decide to choose them. They were goals in the soft sense of, I'd like to have this one day, but how can we differentiate that? Not real goals in the sense of, I plan to have this like this year, within the next 3 months, within the next 6 months. I plan to have this. That's different. We need to have different verbiage for those two things. One's, I guess, a dream, and one's a goal, I think. Right? When you plan to have it one day, that's a dream. But when you plan to have it and when you decide to have it, that's the difference. When you decide to have it, that's a goal. Right? So, and I'm all about dreams, but you have to make dreams goals. And that is the only way to make them reality. The universe doesn't care about dreams if they're just soft, I'm going to have this one day. Yeah, one day I want to start a business. Yeah, one day I want to go travel around the world. Yeah, one day I want to be a millionaire. Yeah, one day I want to own a house. Yeah, one day I want to get married or whatever. Those are dreams. And then when you take control and you say, no, I decide that this is going to be my reality, that is possibly one of the scariest things that you could ever do, especially when it's really big and you really care about it. It's also one of the most important things. That's why I disagree so much. I mentioned in one of my posts, I think today's post, about the Sedona method, and something that...
Yeah, it was today's.
Yeah. Something I do agree with them on about, wanting versus having. I'm going to cover that soon. But one thing I do highly, highly disagree about is when people say, in order to get what you want, you have to let go of the desire of it. And I'm just like, heck no, why? That's not fun.
If that's you're just not raised that way here.
No.
Maybe that's something somebody in India can do. because of his culture or something. I don't know. I can't.
Energetically,
I'm not
I just
even going to try that.
Yeah.
I might not hold on to the desires hard. I might make it less stressful or something on myself.
Right.
But to me, without the desire,
what's the point?
Really, you just think, why am I even doing this?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Well, it's not creating.
It's not creating. It's just,
Creating is action. It's not sitting back and
wishing.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the biggest criticisms of the law of attraction from the outside is, it's just sitting on your couch and dreaming about things and planning on it falling into your lap. And that's not how it works. That's not how it works.
That's how everyone portrays it, though.
That's how everyone portrays it. But it's also...
of Abraham.
Right. And it's also not... Some people say all goals in the law of attraction take action. I'm not going to say all goals do. I have heard of plenty of examples where it did just fall into their lap. But you have to at least be willing to act, and you have to at least have the openness to act and be willing for it to go there. But it's neither one or the other. It's not where you just sit on your couch and dream and feel good about it and it comes knocking on your door. And it's also not you go out and take a lot of action, because we've all done that, and through your action you get it. And the law of attraction is just sort of a secondary helper. That's what some people think. It's not that. It's a lot more than that. But we do play a central role in the process. So, that is important. All right. So I think that is it for today. We've gone over our time. So I think this was good. We covered, 2 questions, and that was perfect. It's kind of my goal. So I appreciate everyone who came, and if you have any suggestions for, how to do these in the future, this is pretty new still, so feel free to let me know. This will be posted up tomorrow, being Wednesday. The recording will be at some point tomorrow. So, but I really appreciate everyone joining, and I hope the answers helped.
Definitely.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, all right.
Right.
Great. Have a great night, everyone.
Awesome. It was great.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.